watching NRA TV with Bill Whittle.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Live from Los Angeles, California. I'm Bill Whittle, and this is the Hot Mike Show. We went looking for Hot Mike to see if we could get him on the show. It's his show. And we found him down in his parents' basement with Battlefield 4 on his Xbox and I think 7 empty bags of Cheetos and a couple of 6-packs of Mountain Dew. He's passed out cold. We couldn't wake him at all. So with any luck, we'll have him back tomorrow. I just am beginning to feel like this kind of thing's just irresponsible of him. Just a feeling I get. Well, today we're going to be talking about President Trump's direct mail campaign to the American people. Yeah, you heard me. It's a brilliant stroke of media manipulation, which is what Donald Trump is very, very good at. So let's just go ahead and set the stage, shall we? The media for the last 50, 60 years, news media, newspaper people have always leaned left. Back at the beginning of the last century, in the early 1900s, right after the Soviet Revolution, there was a reporter from the New York Times named Walter Duranty. Walter Duranty went to the Soviet Union many times and said, "This is amazing. This is the workers' paradise. Everybody here is just as happy as they possibly can be." Now, Duranty knew that people were starving, and Duranty saw what was actually happening, but Duranty was a left-winger, so you've got to have that socialist experiment survive. So he basically not only didn't report the news, he covered up the news. And for this, Walter Duranty won the Pulitzer Prize, and the New York Times still hasn't given it back. But he basically put up a cover for mass murder. So this is not anything new. What is getting to be new is the degree to which the mainstream media, now that all the cards are on the table, now that all of the pretending to be objective, all that stuff is gone. It's been gone for a while. But now that it is gone, we have a problem as a society. The president is usually represented by his press agent. Press agent comes out, speaks at a press conference. Then the news media takes the information given by the press agent and, in the system we once had, would more or less fairly parse that out into what the president's position was on things, but those days are gone. The press has been in the business of destroying Republican presidents for quite a long time, and if you ask the average member of the media, I mean, you'd really have to get them pretty liquored up for this, but if you ask them how they thought about themselves, what they thought about themselves, you asked them about their self-image, I bet you all of them would say, blurrily, that they consider themselves to be Woodward and Bernstein. One's Dustin Hoffman and the other's Robert Redford, and working late through the night and meeting, secret, leaks and information and banging things out on our old typewriters. That's how they see themselves, as purveyors of the truth. But it's just not true anymore. Now, as far as destroying presidents goes, they certainly helped Kennedy, didn't help Nixon, and back and forth we go. Now, the one thing I think is most interesting about this in recent history is if you look back at the way they destroyed President Bush from the beginning, much in the same way they tried to make President Trump's election, if not illegal, then certainly illegitimate. They did the same thing with George Bush back in the 2000 election. You probably remember that Bush and Gore went on forever and ever trying to win the state of Florida. Now, as it turned out, the Constitution says that you're required to vote, and George Bush won the vote in Florida. And then it says if it's close, you can do a recount using the same machine. So they did a recount, and Bush still won. And they kept recounting, and they kept recounting, and they kept recounting, and they were going to recount until the second that Al Gore won, at which point the people's will has been expressed and we can stop recounting. Well, the reason I bring up George Bush is because they never, ever let him have one day as president where he wasn't under this cloud of illegitimacy. They'd say that he's the resident and not the president, and so on and so forth. But here's the point about George Bush especially. I think George Bush was a man of a great deal of personal decency and a pretty strong sense of personal demeanor. And so the most vile lies would be launched at President Bush, and he simply wouldn't respond at all. And as a person who defended him throughout his entire term, pretty much, well, certainly starting in 2002, it was pretty frustrating to hear enormous lies, primarily the Bush lied, people died thing, being shot at President Bush and not getting any response at all. I think George W. Bush thought that the office of the presidency was above that. And he may have been right. But it's not above it anymore, because that damage was done, and somebody learned the lesson from what they did to George W. Bush. I'm one of those people, and I suspect that Donald Trump is another. Donald Trump, in 2012, 4 days after Romney lost, I said the next president is going to be a Republican, and he's going to come from the pop culture. He's going to have to know how to speak the language of the American people through television. He's going to have to know how to do that, or else he's not going to get elected. And sure enough, that turned out to be true. Donald Trump ran the 2016 campaign like a virtuoso. Everybody thought he was a joke when he got started. Everybody. And then it got down to the final, say, 8, and people said, oh, no, Trump will be out before they get to 4. And then they got to 4, then they got to 3, then they got to 2, and Donald Trump is still there. Then he wins the nomination. Well, he has no chance to be president. Well, he's president of the United States of America. He's doing something right. And the reason Donald Trump is president is because he understands the media, how the media works, the bias, and he, most importantly, understands how to beat them. He understands how to beat them. So all of that to say that we just got a prime example of President Trump doing the kind of things that he did when he was candidate Trump, the kind of things that got him elected. So let's have a look at a political message just released from President Donald Trump.
Democrats obstructing, the media attacking our president, career politicians standing in the way of success. But President Trump's plan is working. 1 million jobs created, more Americans working than ever before, unemployment lowest since 2001, the stock market all-time record highs, the strongest military in decades. The president's enemies don't want him to succeed, but Americans are saying, let President Trump do his job.
I'm Donald Trump, and I approve this message.
He is Donald Trump, and he did approve that message. Folks, I've never seen anything like that before. That was, in fact, pretty much the definitive campaign ad for a campaign that's not on. This is the kind of thing that Donald Trump would use to sell himself to the American people during an election year, but he's already president. So why is the president essentially reduced to having to run a campaign ad 7-8 months into his presidency? Well, because the news media bias now is so insane and so personal and so venal, and all the leaks and all the rest of that deep state stuff, that President Trump understands that you cannot talk to the media the way that you would have even 15, 20 years ago, that it is a hostile witness, as you would say in court. So what President Trump has done is basically take 5 or 6 key figures of his administration so far, and they're impressive. Lowest unemployment, stock market record, all of these data, 5 or 6 points, pound them out in a campaign ad, and he went around the media. He went straight to the American people. And I think that is really brilliant, because the news media has lost their minds over Donald Trump. Their obsession with the Russia story and all the rest of this fake news and so on. They're doing everything they can to basically have him removed from office because they don't like him. And that means that they don't like those of you who voted for him either, or me either, or any of the rest of those, people out there in flyover country who suddenly got up on their hind legs and derailed the great socialist experiment. So I think it's brilliant. I think it's absolutely brilliant. Now, Donald Trump has done a bunch of tweeting, but Twitter doesn't get to everybody. Twitter's a kind of a specialized sort of thing, certainly not the kind of thing that everybody in the country, especially conservatives, get. But this ad, I think, was terrific, and I think it's going to get some traction. So to help us talk about this today is our friend back again, Jeff Crouere from Ringside Politics Radio. Jeff, good to see you again. This is a campaign ad that we just saw, isn't it?
Bill, I loved it because it really hits the points that you just mentioned. The media has been on the left for so many years trying to take down Republicans, from Nixon to Reagan to Bush, now to Donald Trump. But now it's worse than ever, Bill. Now it's just there's no pretenses. There's no sheer of impartiality or objectivity. It's just hardcore anti-Trump reporting. And now I think the president's fighting back. I've never seen a candidate launch a re-election bid 3 years before the election, but that's what it is. And you're right. He's got many things he can tout. The ad just picks a few. There are many more things he can say, a lot of accomplishments in his first 7 months. And of course, the media are his enemies. I would have added a few more different enemies. He's got lots of enemies. Maybe the deep state, maybe the rhinos, but certainly the media is at the top of the list.
You know, this interesting point you just made, Jeff. You said that basically it is a re-election campaign ad 3.5 years before the election. That's exactly what it is, isn't it? He has basically said, I'm not saying that he's trying to get reelected right now. What I am saying is he is presenting the information about himself and his presidency in a way that's appealing to the American people in a way that they never get. They never get to hear these statistics about unemployment and all the rest of it because it makes the light worker look bad. But it's a re-election campaign ad, isn't it? That's exactly what it is.
Well, and he needs to do that because the media is not going to do him any favors. They're not going to report the truth. They're going to be biased. He's got to get the message out there about the job he's doing to lay the groundwork for the midterms and for re-election. And I think he's letting all the doubters know, hey, he's going to be running again. He's going to have a record he's going to run on, and he's going to vigorously pursue re-election in 2020. But never before, Bill, have I seen any president encounter this number of enemies that Donald Trump is encountering. And he's a fighter, as you say. This is a new type of president. He's taking them on. He's not a George W. Bush. He's not above the fray. He is in the fray. He is in the mix. And I love it, to be honest with you.
I love it too, Jeff. And when I first saw it, my first reaction was, wow. And my second reaction was, why weren't you doing this 5 months ago? I mean, I guess hindsight's 20/20, right? I don't think anybody expected. I knew there'd be pushback from the left when Trump was elected and then inaugurated, but I never thought I'd see some of the things I'm seeing today. So do you think that if he had been doing this for the last 6 or 7 months, do you think that would have, on some level, forced the media to play a little more fair because he's putting out data? He's not just saying people like me. He's saying, here are the economic numbers and so on. I think it's certainly not too late, but I sure would like to have seen something like this on pretty much every one of the key issues of Trump's presidency so far.
I agree, Bill. And as you say, he tweets out this information regularly, but it's different when you're doing an ad on television and on the internet. It reaches a broader audience, and I wish he would have done it from day one. He's got a lot he can tout. He's got a lot he can really boast about, and this message needs to get out there as a balance to what the media is trying to do to him, which is bring him down, destroy him, try to oust him, really. I mean, that's what some of them want to do. So, yeah, better late than never. I'm glad he's doing this. I think we're going to see a lot more of this. And I'm excited because I see a president who I think finally is taking on the media and is not going to back down, and maybe exposing the media more so than we've ever seen. Because a lot of times Americans somehow believe that the media was fair and objective. Donald Trump is really setting the record straight about who the media really is.
Jeff, I wonder who's paying for these ads. And frankly, whoever is paying for them, I don't know what kind of ad buy they did or how wide they're reaching. Maybe just the fact that it's out there in a couple of markets is enough. But I'm curious to know who's paying for it, and I'll tell you who I think should be paying for it. I think the GOP should be paying for it. I think the GOP party actually should be paying for these ads, and I think they should be spending big money on them, because we talked earlier about what we learned from what the media did to George W. Bush, but we have another lesson to learn from what the media did to Mitt Romney. Romney's strategy was, no, I'm going to save my money. I'm going to wait. I'm going to save my money. And then as we get into the final months, I'm going to come in heavy. Well, he got whipped. And the reason he got whipped was while he was sitting on his hands, Team Obama and the Democrats were starting to form an image of Romney that Romney never shook. Romney's a cold-hearted millionaire. He gives people cancer. He puts women in binders. He put his dog on the roof. And by the time Romney decided to start spending some money, it was too late. He was already a villain, couldn't undo it. I think we ought to be spending 2020 money like this and push these things wide for the next 3.5 years.
I think the Republican Party should be doing it as well, Bill. And I think the Republican Party should be doing a lot more for President Trump, like helping his agenda get through Congress. But I think it's his campaign that is actually doing it. I think it's Trump Pence that is running this by. And I think the Republican Party should embrace it and get behind it. And I'd love to see him call out even more some of these so-called Republicans who are stopping his agenda from being implemented. And if it were not for the Republicans, I mean, we'd have at least some sort of a repeal of Obamacare, not what I would like to see, but at least some sort of fulfillment of campaign pledges to do something about Obamacare. But because 3 Republicans didn't vote for it, it got shot down. And now they're on vacation, and the president is rightfully calling them out. And I think we need to have more of a focus on those Republicans that aren't getting behind the president and his important agenda, the agenda that we in 31 states voted for with his electoral landslide that he received last November.
Now that is an interesting point, this idea of targeting the rhinos. Matter of fact, it's such an interesting point we're going to have to do it when we come back from our break. We'll be back in 2 minutes. I'm Bill Whittle here on the Hype Mike Show on NRA TV.
It's hard to believe, but this year marks the 6th season of The Noir Show. I've had a hell of a good time trying to put together the best take on gun culture I possibly can. And one of the best parts has been interacting with you, the fans. One thing you've said from the very beginning is we want more noir. Well, me too. So this year I'm doing things a little different. We're gonna wait until the fall to give you finished, polished, shiny new episodes. Nope. This year, we're gonna release content while we're still in production. So some of these videos are gonna make it into the final episodes this fall, others are only gonna be standalone. Either way, my goal is to give you exactly what you want. More noir. So look forward to all sorts of new content from The Noir Show for the rest of the year. And I hope you enjoy.
It's as patriotic as it gets. A gathering in the heartland of folks from all 50 states. Welders, salesmen, farmers, accountants, soldiers, first responders. Here, we're all the same. Here, we are all race fans. We are proud of our country, proud of our military, proud of our drivers. We proudly stand for our national anthem. And we have a great reverence for names like Yarborough, Earnhardt, Waltrip, and Gordon. Yes, there are other NASCAR races, but this one is special. 500 temper-flaring, finger-waving, ego-busting 15-second laps. And deep into the warm August night, hardly a seat in the last great Coliseum will be used. You see, this isn't just a race. This is America's night race. The Bass Pro Shops NRA Night Race.
And we're back live from Los Angeles with our guest, Jeff Crouere from Ringside Politics Radio, talking about Donald Trump's new campaign ad. A campaign ad for a campaign that hasn't started yet. An election year ad for a sitting president who is not currently running for re-election. It's remarkable. Jeff, you mentioned before the break that this kind of thing could be done to target specific issues. It could, one, target specifically why we need to repeal Obamacare, specific ones on North Korea, whatever the case may be. What fascinates me about this is not so much the topics, but the fact that these are very well done. They're very effective. And we are seeing Donald Trump basically, instead of trying to assault this front line and the trenches and the barbed wire and the mines and the machine guns and the artillery, he's basically going over and parachuting in behind enemy lines. He's taking that message directly to the American people in a way he wants to frame it. And I think it's brilliant.
Well, Bill, I remember the Reagan administration, and I remember Ronald Reagan, who got a lot of negative coverage from the media. He would do this with sort of an address to the American people. He would go over the heads of the media. He would talk directly to the American people. It was very effective. So this, I think, is Donald Trump's way of doing it. He does it through this kind of medium. He does it through Twitter. He really reaches the American people. He does it through his rallies, which are extremely effective and very popular. Yep. And I think that's what energizes his base. I think his base is with him 100%. And I think people realize he's up against incredible odds and working hard. We know this is a guy who's not loafing around. He's working for the American people. And I think, in my view, he is delivering for the American people.
Well, I've been saying for about 8 years now, or a little bit longer, that this current war for America's survival is a war of images and ideas. It's not about bullets and battleships. This is a narrative war. It's an information war. It's a perception war. Do you think that this ad is going to get some traction? Do you think it's the beginning of a whole series of ads, or do you think it's kind of a one-off, just kind of for the publicity of it?
Oh, no, Bill, I think this is part of a well-thought-out campaign. As you pointed out earlier, this is a media-savvy individual who's made his career in real estate and on a reality TV show and through years being interviewed. I think he knows the media well. So I think he has got a plan to continue this from now until 2020. I mean, I think this is just the first in a series of different types of presentations we're going to see from the president. I think the rallies are all part of it, his social media expression. I'd like to see the president do more of a sit-down address with the American people, but that's obviously not what he's comfortable doing. The more that he can communicate directly with the American people, I think the better, Bill, because I think he's got a very good message that he can convey to the people.
I agree, Jeff, and he's obviously hired good people. Those are tremendous ads. They're very well made, very punchy, and really, really good. Jeff, thanks so much for joining us. Jeff Crouere, our friend here, is available at Ringside Politics Radio. And thanks so much for joining us today, Jeff. It's great to get your insight on all of this.
Thank you, Bill.
My friend Evan Sayet, who has been on the show once or twice, said this about Donald Trump, and I think he's spot on. He said Donald Trump is a war president, and he's a war president for the kind of war that we're in. He talked about Ulysses S. Grant, who during the Civil War was a drunk. At the beginning of the war, he was a failed tanner. He was completely out of money, and he had a reputation for drinking. But Lincoln watched his career, and Lincoln said, when people would complain to him about Grant's drinking, Lincoln said, "I can't spare this man. He fights." Same thing for George Patton. George Patton was not the kind of guy you want to have at a cocktail party. George Patton was loud. He was obnoxious. He was very, very direct and bold. And this is not the kind of general that does well in peacetime, but Patton is a fighting general. He's exactly what you want when you're in the middle of a fight. And we are in the middle of the fight. And Evan's point is, and I think he's absolutely right, this is a war president. We don't care about his warts. We don't care about his warts. What we care about is, does he fight? And this ad is a pretty good example that he does. Now, real quickly before we go, just a fun little thing to kind of end up the day. Sometimes if I get a chance, I'd love to do these kind of things. There's some inside little information on the movie business in general, just these weird little sort of inside things that I find interesting, and you may as well too. And the one we want to talk about just very quickly before we go is called the Wilhelm scream. Now, as it turns out, there's a sound effect that has been in hundreds and hundreds of movies, and you probably don't know it. But originally, they made a Western. A guy gets shot by an arrow, and he gives his character's name was Wilhelm, and he gives this weird scream as he falls off his horse. Well, they used it again because it was an interesting piece of sound effects that they had. Then they used it again, and as time went on, people began to realize, we got to find a way to work this thing in. So they worked it in to just about everything. So listen carefully. You'll see the first one. This is the Wilhelm scream. It's kind of a hidden Easter egg in many films made here just over the hill in Hollywood.
Wilhelm! Yeah, I'll I'll just fill my pipe.
See, that's just fun. That's just fun, and I have to tell you, it's great. It's a great feeling to talk about elements of the entertainment business that I do like, because I've been working at this kind of thing since I was 20, and I think that's probably a nice way to close this episode today. You know, film, movies, pop culture, all of it. It's tremendously entertaining. It's tremendously fun. It should be there to make Americans happy. It should be there for recreational purposes. It does not have to be infused with politics every single second of every single day. We do not have to get politics in every single thing that we get. So the Wilhelm scream's kind of an interesting little subnote, because people have a lot of fun doing these things. One of the reasons this town is so nuts is that people want to be in this business so badly that they'll come and they'll work for free and do all kinds of unspeakable things. But I just love the fact that sound designers had this little hidden thing, and that all of them tried to work it into their movies. And once you've heard the Wilhelm scream, I guarantee you will notice it when you hear it next time. I'll be out there watching movies or TV, and then just suddenly just drop in there and puts a little smile on my face. I just think it's really clever and really cool. Now, if only Hollywood could get out of the politics business and go back to being what they used to be, which is a storytelling business. You know, very quickly, one of the reasons that Hollywood got so left-wing was because antitrust legislation in the 30s severed the connection between the studio and the theaters. Paramount Studios used to own Paramount Theaters and so on. So they had to make movies that would put people into the theaters, or else they lose money, they go out of business. So when you cut that connection, it doesn't matter what Hollywood puts out. Not really, because they have money coming in from overseas and any number of other places. If they were making movies to make the American people happy and satisfied, we would see a very, 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 very different set of films coming from over the hill back there. Well, that'll do it for the Monday edition of the Hot Mike Show. I'm Bill Whittle. We'll be back tomorrow with an entirely new cast of characters and villains and miscreants and heroes. This is the Hot Mike Show, as I say, right here on NRA TV.